Hello, everybody. This is Dan. I will be going over setting up votes and proxies in myHOAst. There are not many steps to getting this done, but let's go over them one by one. The first step is to add a meeting. Add a meeting is always first when creating any vote or proxy, because the meeting name, the meeting location, the meeting date and time will all be put on the proxy and will all be put on every vote. So it's important in the system to create the meeting first so that we have the information to attach to the votes. And again, only those 4 pieces are required to have a meeting set up in myHOAst. Step number 2 is to create the ballot, the proxy vote, or the survey. It doesn't matter if it's a secret ballot or a not secret ballot, whether it's a vote for changing community documents or a survey that does not require quorum at all. Any process, any vote is set up the exact same way. We do this so that when you're creating a survey, sort of a practice vote for your community, you're going to follow the exact same process as if you were creating a vote that would be an election requiring a quorum. So that way the survey is true practice for you setting it up, for your members for experiencing voting. So it's all done the same. Step 3 is to create the general proxy. Now, we don't create limited proxies. The limited proxy is unnecessary if a person is voting electronically. And if you're entering paper proxy votes, then you're deciding outside the software if the vote is valid or not. The proxy vote is valid if they choose the default proxy holder that you have set up. The proxy vote is also valid if they choose their own proxy holder and that proxy holder is in attendance at the meeting. And the proxy vote is also valid if they are handing it to you in person at the meeting. So in those 3 cases, you're deciding the validity of the proxy vote prior to putting the data into myHOAst. So it's not necessary to have a built limited proxy or directed proxy within myHOAst. We do recommend putting the general proxy in myHOAst, not that it's necessary to make the electronic vote valid, but so that when you get a paper general proxy, you have a way to enter it into the system. And the general proxy can be used to make other decisions at the meeting. Arlene, any questions yet?
No, there are no questions yet.
Okay. Step number 4 is to specify the opt-in, opt-out deadline dates. This is for Florida only. Florida is the only state that has the opt-in, opt-out deadline dates, and these come from your board resolution. There is a place under the Help menu option to be able to store your board resolution. I recommend you folks in Florida, you do that, because we're going to have to refer to these dates for every vote from now on that requires a quorum. So not surveys, but every other vote, you're going to have to refer to these deadline dates, and they need to be pulled from that resolution. Step number 5, review your work, make corrections. Nothing's live yet. The system starts off by making all of this hidden. The vote is closed, so you have the ability to do this work well ahead of time. Change it as you want. Perhaps review the language of your vote. Review any attachments make corrections. This is just letting you know that it is not live and corrections can be made. Then, step number 6, you're opening the vote. Now it's visible. Now voting can happen. It cannot happen until step 6. You must open the vote. And the reason we're doing opening the vote this late in these steps is because once the first vote comes in, then you can no longer make changes to your ballot or your survey or your proxy vote. Changes cannot be made after the first one has come in. So it's a good idea to review everything and make sure you're ready. And the last step is tell your voters. Tell your voters it's time to vote. The fact that you've created the vote doesn't automatically send anything to the voters. You must tell the voters when you're ready. And it is your decision whether you're telling all of the voters. If you have the ability to email all the voters, and you would say something like, if you have not registered or you've not signed the opt-in form, please do so and maybe give them instructions on how to do that. Or you could send this email only to those who have said they're going to vote electronically. One thing to keep in mind, again in Florida, is that if you opt in for electronic voting, you have opted in for the electronic voting process. That means you are free to send them email that relates to electronic voting. I know there's an opt-in in Florida for receiving email, but again, I'll state it again, if you opt in for electronic voting in Florida, you have opted in for the process, and that by itself includes some email communication, even if you haven't opted in for receiving official documents via email in your community. Okay, Eileen, any questions?
Nope, no questions at all.
Okay, well, let's get on to see what this looks like. So I'm going to log on as the, in this case here, I'll be the subscriber. That's because a subscriber can do anything, but this could also be the admin. This is not the class for just the intro, but just letting you know, in case you don't know, that every association gets their own site, like a log on to Presidential Place. Presidential Place is an association. This is where all the Presidential Place members will log in. And once you log in, if you're a voter, if the system recognizes you as a voter, you will land here on the voting page. Now, although I am a subscriber, I'm also a voter. So let's leave here and get to the first step says to add a meeting. So I'm going to go to the owner's meetings. And by the way, before I do this, take a look at the help menu option. That's where I said to put the board resolution if you're in Florida. But at the very top of the help menu option is the user's guide. Everything that I'm showing you is in the user's guide. In fact, it's all been put into Appendix A in the user's guide. So Appendix A, or if you're in Texas, it would be Appendix I, or 1. That has been, that will show you exactly how to create a vote. So everything that I'm telling you is in there. Now, if you're in Florida, your user's guide should be dated January 20, 2020. And if you're in Texas, your user guide should be dated December 18th, 2019. So assuming you have the right date, and we're in process of getting the Florida user guide updated, just make sure you have the right dates. Okay, so this is all in Appendix A for Florida, Appendix I for Texas. Step 1, create the meeting. So I'll go to Owner's Meetings. Now this is just telling me that I'm leaving the voting area and I haven't yet voted. Okay, so I already have a meeting out here, pool heater survey. I've got 22.7% quorum reached at this point. Quorum 1 is the only quorum that Florida and Texas needs to look at. And it says here I have a e-proxy, that is a general proxy, and the vote is open. so this vote is visible. Typically, I don't like to have more than one vote open at a time, so I'm going to close this vote. And you'll see this again later. Click on the meeting line, click on voting, and I put a checkbox in this, a check in that little box, and the vote is now closed. I go back, and yes, the voting time is closed. So now I got a fresh start here. I'm going to create a new meeting. Again, I click on meeting, and I need to provide 4 pieces of information. The name of the meeting, and I'll say it's a parking lot survey. Location. You know, online is a good way to do a survey because you're telling the members that you're not going to actually physically meet. So I like saying online. And I'll say that the meeting time is going to be, I'll give it the end of next month. And the actual time, although we're not physically meeting, but I'll say it's going to be in the afternoon, like 2 p.m. I hit add a meeting, and I'm done. I have provided the name of the meeting, the location, and the date and time. And a little reminder here for me, it tells me that although I've created this, any vote I create will start off closed, and if it's closed, that means the vote is going to be invisible to the users. So I'm just going to acknowledge that, yes, I understand that. Eileen, any questions?
There's a comment I thought you might want to address. One of the people on the class says, my user's guide is not up to date.
Yes, the user's guide should be up to date in the next 24 hours. I didn't know if it would be this morning or by tomorrow morning, but look for it in the next 24 hours. Sometime in the next 24 hours, it will be out there. Thank you, Eileen. So again, we started off by creating the meeting. So here's the meeting that's been created. We have no general proxy. We haven't done that step yet. And if I click on the meeting line, there is no vote that's been created either. Okay, so that was step 1, add a meeting. Step 2 is create the ballot, proxy vote, or survey. That's clicking on the line of the meeting I care about and selecting voting. Now, we've seen this screen before. That check mark means this vote is closed. So this is invisible. Even though we haven't started yet, we want it to start off closed so that nobody is going to bother us while we create this and perhaps edit some of the choices we make. So we have a choice now of 2 selections. It's either a secret vote or a not secret vote. Now, just very briefly, I want to show you that if it was a secret vote, I'm going to go to make sure I know that we're not talking about a directed proxy vote. We're not talking about a limited proxy vote. We're talking about a secret vote, which means the ballot is anonymous. There's no member name on the ballot. There's no member address on the ballot. Truly secret. This is what we typically refer to as the 2-envelope system, so that the ballot is completely secret and goes into an envelope by itself. Now, when I say confirm, I know what I'm talking about here. I'm landing on a page that looks like this. And I'm going to back up, and now I'm going to hit the not secret vote. And I want you to see I'm landing on basically the same page. So when you know how to create one vote, you know how to create all votes. The reason we had to select one button or the other is to tell the system, how do you want the system to behave? Do you want the system to take the member's name, separate the member's name from the vote so it's truly secret? Do you want the reports to come out where you cannot associate the name or address with a particular vote? The buttons we chose dictated how the system will behave. It does not dictate how you will create a vote. Okay, so we're doing the easier one, which is we're going to handle a not secret vote. So again, question or issue, what question are you having them respond to? I'll say, do you want to add speed bumps in the parking lot. And here is where I can attach any document. The simplest document that we refer to is when you do an election, you're going to attach the resumes or the candidate information sheets. You attach only one document per vote, but it can be unlimited size and in any number of pages. So if I had 5 people running for the board, I might have 5 candidate information sheets. I would combine them together to make a 5-page PDF file. We always recommend PDF. I've also seen people who will talk about flowers and will attach a set of pictures or drawings for having the new clubhouse built. But here's where you would attach any file. You merely browse to find it on your computer. In this case, I'm not going to attach a file. If I wanted to, I certainly could attach a picture of a speed hump. I'm getting down to maximum number of responses allowed on this ballot. Okay, I'm assuming there's just going to be a yes/no question, so I'm going to give them maximum of 1. They can give me one answer. It'll be yes or no. Minimum number of responses. Now, I like a minimum of 0 because that means they're abstaining, but the electronic ballot will still count toward the quorum. So an abstained electronic ballot is useful in getting to the proper quorum. This is entirely your choice. You can make this a minimum of 1 as well if you wanted. Your choices to vote on, I'll say the first choice is yes, and the next choice is no. I save it, and I'm done. So that was step number 2, create the ballot and proxy votes. Any questions, Eileen?
No questions.
Okay, step number 3, create the general proxy. I'm going to go back here to the meeting. I'm going to click on the meeting line, so I get the pull-down menu, and I'm going to add a general proxy. And all we need for the general proxy is who is the default proxy holder. In many cases, it's the secretary or the president of the board. Sometimes you put in someone's name, but this is the default proxy holder. So if we receive a proxy that has the default proxy holder as the choice, then this proxy is going to immediately count toward quorum. If the person decides to overwrite the secretary of the board with a different name, we're going to have to leave that proxy in limbo, waiting to see whether their new proxy holder is in attendance at the meeting. So default proxy holder counts right away. Another name as a substitute proxy holder, we have to wait until the proxy holder they chose to see whether or not that person is at the meeting. And I just hit add, and that's done. So step 2, create the ballot proxy vote. I'm sorry. Step 3, create the general proxy is done. Eileen, any questions?
No, no questions.
Okay, so step 4 is specify the opt-in, opt-out deadline dates. And again, it says refer to your board resolution. Now again, this is Florida only. Texas, you do not want to do this, does not apply. But Florida, you go to the opt-in, opt-out dates, and you select the dates here. Now the meeting was on February 29th. So I typically have a deadline date of February 28th to opt in. And I typically have a opt-out date of January 29th. Again, this comes off your board resolution. It's important to make sure you're following your board resolution. And I'll say use these dates. I'll update, and I've set now my opt-in, opt-out dates. Again, Florida, if you're doing any votes where a quorum is required, this is mandatory. You must do this step. Now, step 5, review your work, make corrections. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the owners meeting. Here's my meeting line, parking lot survey. I'm going to click on voting. The vote is still closed, so I can still make changes. And I'm going to go to View, Edit All. As the person creating the meeting and creating the vote, you may not be a voter yourself, so you may not be able to easily see the vote and see the proxy. This Edit View All allows you to see what the voters are going to see. So I'm going to click here to view for my vote. And it looks like I've got a little misspelling up here. I've got, do you want to add speed humps in the parking lot? And there's that crazy 1 sitting there. So I'm going to edit that and get rid of that 1. Go down here and save it. Okay, now that looks a little better. Do you want to add some speed humps in the parking lot? I've got a yes, no response. And I'm thinking, you know, I should really make another change. So I'm going to edit it again. Let's say, do you want to add speed humps in the parking lot at a cost of $10,000 per unit? That's probably pretty important information. I'll save that. Again, you can make changes as often as you want here. You can go from not secret to a secret. I can change my mind and add a picture of the speed hump. Until that first vote comes in, you can make changes. So now I'm looking at this and I like it. It's what I want. So I'm going to go back and now look at the proxy. Click here to look at the proxy. And it looks like this. It says you're going to assign the proxy and you're going to choose. You're either going to choose this, which is you're going to take the default proxy, or you're going to provide a new proxy holder name, which you type the name in here, or they're going to select quorum only, counts toward a quorum, but you can't do any additional voting at the meeting. This is typically not used by Florida. This is typically used in Texas. But that's what this looks like. Make sure the Secretary of the Board is what I want. That's really the only piece of information I've added. I like that, so I go back. So I'm satisfied. I've done my step number 5. I've reviewed my work. I made some corrections. I'm going to go back again now. And Eileen, are there any questions?
Yeah, would you, there's a little confusion on adding a general proxy. So could you go over that? What is a general proxy and why would you be adding it? Could you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yes, a general proxy allows the proxy holder to vote at the meeting for anything that comes up not related to the directed proxy vote. Some examples are you could have those who are present and those that are proxy holders of general proxies only. They could vote on whether or not to accept the vote as it's come in or to extend the vote another month, 2 months, 3 months. To do that, it is required that you get a majority vote of those present, and the proxy holder the proxy holder of a general proxy can vote for as many votes as he has general proxies. So if the general proxy holder was selected to be John Smith, and John Smith is also a voter there, also has his own piece of property, then John Smith gets 2 votes. He votes because he's present and he is a voter for one of the units. He also votes a second time because somebody selected him as their general proxy holder. So your limited proxy, is the proxy holder in the limited proxy is like the mailman. The limited proxy holder, it only makes the limited proxy or the directed proxy a legal vote. It's the general proxy that allows somebody to vote for you for other issues coming up. Proxies are not an easy thing to understand. Any other questions, Eileen?
I'm just waiting to see if there's any follow-up, but we can continue for now.
Yeah, typically, especially what I've seen in Florida, is the proxy will probably say limited proxy at the top of the page, and then it will have the vote below, like waiving reserves. But if you read the language, it's likely to say my proxy holder can vote as I've indicated below, which is waiving the reserves. And then it will further state that my proxy holder can vote on all other things that come up. It's telling, the form is saying that my waiving reserves vote, which is below, you can't change what I want to vote for. But if something comes up that was unexpected, you serve as me. If I get one vote, then this proxy holder gets that vote for the other things that come up at that meeting. So
okay, there's a couple of follow-ups.
Go ahead.
So there's a couple of follow-ups. One is, so do you have to add multiple proxies for whichever units have proxy holders?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me see if I can answer it this way. A proxy holder is representing you. So if you have, say, 10 units that you can vote on, you designate one proxy holder, and that person represents you. So if you have 10 units to vote on, that person, based upon the one general proxy form, that person has 10 votes. The person is representing you for whatever you're able to do. Does that answer the question, Eileen?
I'll wait and see if there's a follow-up. But I think so. That was my interpretation. Another topic is, does the consent form for online voting need to be on paper?
It does not. In fact, we discourage having it on paper. The opt-in, opt-out forms in Florida never expire, and you can sign them and unsign them as often as you want. So when you think about that, if a person in the community is upset at the board or the CAM or the office, people who work in the office, they could be signing and unsigning that opt-in form, opt-in, opt-out form every hour, every half hour. I mean, it can be a lot of work. And the opt-in, opt-out has to be handled in a particular way. If you opt in past the opt-in deadline date, now you have to hold that, but don't accept it. And then after the meeting, then you accept it, and then you update the system. It's not terribly hard, but it is not terribly simple either. If you have the system do it, you will have no work to do. You'll have no mailing to do. That's saving some money. And you have no filing to do and no keeping of the documents. So yes, it can be done entirely online. That's perfectly acceptable in Florida. In fact, it's acceptable across the whole United States. But we recommend, do not do that on paper.
Okay, just as a follow-on to that, Dan, I don't know if we'll have time at the end of this session, and I know that you've got this particular session set up on this particular demo for setting up votes and proxies. If we have an opportunity at the end, maybe you can show us what the online opt-in form looks like.
Certainly. Because we are really almost done. We've already made we've reviewed our work and made corrections. We only have 2 steps left. And again, the timing is yours. If this was a meeting coming up in June, I will obviously not want to do step 6 now. I don't want to open the vote. You want to open the vote the day that you mail out your ballot information. Your ballot, your double envelopes, if it's a secret election, your candidate information sheets, the day that is put into the postal mail. For you condos, it would be your second notice. When that is put into the postal mail, that's the day you want to open up the election for electronic voting. And opening up the vote is merely done by taking that check mark off, and now the vote's open. Just to verify it, if I go back here, the vote is open. So now the vote is visible to anybody who logs in. But we're not done. We've got one more step, step 7, and that is to email the voters. Although the vote is open, anybody who logs in will see it, but we need to tell people that the vote is open and ask them now to log back in and to vote. You can do that from your own messaging system, or you can go to CM email users and a new message, and you can do it here. Now, when you do it here, you have a choice of emailing something out to all voters, again, if you have permission to do so. Voters opted in for e-voting, and I've already told you, you definitely have permission to do that. You don't have to check whether they've approved receiving email. They've opted in for the e-voting system, and that includes this message. Or you can send something to address not opted in, or you can, this is a great one to use toward the end if you need more votes to make quorum. This sends a message out only to the voters who have opted in for e-voting and have not yet voted. So this is a great one to get as the voting time is winding down. But this is just a way that we can send out messages from myHOAst. If I was beginning a vote and I opened it up today, I would probably send it certainly to the voters who are expected to vote electronically, and I would also send it out from my own messaging system. There's always a possibility that an email from a software package like this might go to their spam, and this should not happen once they start accepting the email, but it may happen. So it'd be a good idea to also send this notification through your own messaging system as well. And when you send out the email to the voters, then you are done with all the steps. And now you can go to owners' meetings. Anybody in leadership can go to owners' meetings and just watch this Quorum 1 grow. That just tells you how successful things are happening as far as receiving votes, because the quorum is going to grow based upon every electronic vote that comes in. That can get pretty exciting. In fact, it's not unusual that people who receive the email, they've said they're going to vote electronically, they receive an email saying it's time to vote electronically. Typically, they'll see that email and they'll just log on and vote at that moment, which means you might find that in the first 24 hours, this increases dramatically. And this is increasing before the postal mail has even been delivered. And that's step 7, and that is the last step. It's a pretty easy process. I hope you see this very easy. And don't forget, in the user's guide, Appendix A for Florida and Appendix 1 or I for Texas, it's all written there with pictures and step-by-step instructions. Eileen?
There are no further questions, but there's 2 things I have. First, or maybe second, but the first thing I'll mention is please show what the opt-in and opt-out or opting in form looks like. And the other thing is we've mentioned opting in and opting out a couple of different times. One of the questions was around, does it have to be on paper? So I think it's important at this point to just mention that your board resolution will say exactly how the opting in and opting out process is to occur.
Yes, and was that question from Florida?
Yes.
About about paper?
Yes.
Okay. Because let me just give you a reference here. You want to get ready to write this down? The reference is, the statute is 668.50. 668.50. That's the Uniform Electronic Transaction Act. The Uniform Electronic Transaction Act might have a different reference per state, but it has been passed by all the states. And what it says here is, on 7 in parentheses, B in parentheses, if a provision of law requires a record to be in writing, and that's what it says in the statute, the opt-in, it must be in writing. If a provision of law requires a record to be in writing, an electronic record satisfies such provision. So clearly you're covered by the statutes in Florida and all the other states to do the opt-in process via electronic means. Now, if I
just sent that, excuse me, Dan, sorry. I just sent that reference to everyone in the chat box so that you guys will have it.
Okay, great. So now I'm logged on as a voter, so I can show you this. If you're not a voter, if you're a CAN property manager and you're doing this, you're not going to be able to see the opt-in form because you're not a voter, and we only allow voters to opt in for voting. Makes sense. So if you were to hit my account and you're not a voter, you will not see online voting consent form, and you will not see votes and general proxy. Remember, votes and general proxy is where I landed the first time. I landed on this page here. It looked a little different because now this is the new vote that we just created and just opened. So now I can see it. So again, as a voter, there is the online voting consent form. And again, this reminded me that I'm leaving the page without voting. So this is the voting consent form. Very simple. In this case, it's my only choice is to opt out because I've already opted in. So I'm going to go ahead and opt out. And now it's asking me to opt in. I cannot look at a vote without being opted in. So you're always going to land on this page until you sign it, and then you will land on the voting page. This is mandatory for all states. You must say that you are interested in voting electronically. In Florida, it's required by statute. In Texas, it's just a way of keeping track of those who have said that they would like to participate electronically. So again, once I opt in, and only if I opt in, I then get to the votes. And you only have to do that once in your life, unless you opt out. Only once do you opt in, and from then on, you're landing on the voting page because you're not opted out unless you specifically say you want to opt out. Anything else, Eileen?
I don't see any follow-up questions, so I'll do a little bit of wrap-up while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions. I just want to encourage everyone to continue to look to see what courses are available for you to take. This is all free training. We have hours of training every month. I'm going to send you a link, in fact, right there it is, that is the link to a place on our website that talks about the free training that we offer every month. At the very bottom of the page, if you scroll down, you'll be able to see that there's a place where you can click to schedule a quick 15-minute session if you have questions, either follow-up or just any question at all that you have about using your software. I also want to call your attention to the fact that you can check the calendar for the open mic sessions. Those are sessions that are available for anyone to call in for anything at all. Any question that you have about the software, it doesn't have to be related to any training that you've been to, or if it is training you've been to and you have follow-on questions, use that session as well. I want to make sure you guys all feel confident about being able to use the software well. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. So with that, I'm going to close the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I look forward to the next time we get together. And Dan, thank you very much. So take care, everyone, and have a great day.